Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about a bunch of crazy news surrounding the Nintendo Switch 2. We have different things going on with pre-orders, with sales, high demand, different peripherals, game key cards, stolen Nintendo Switch 2s. So much is going on right now, and we're going to be talking about it all. But the biggest thing I want to talk about today is what happened last night. Pre-orders opened up here in North America, and it was a battle. Let me tell you, it was quite a challenge, a trial. I tried, and I succeeded. I secured my Nintendo Switch 2 pre-order, but not only did I secure it, it looks like I am getting the console a day early. And I am so thrilled if this holds true. So we're going to be talking about it all today. Now, I will take this moment to briefly mention that we have this goal to reach 50,000 subscribers by the time the Switch 2 launches on June 5th, so if you find yourself enjoying my content, your subscription would be appreciated. So let's first talk about how I secured my Switch 2 pre-order, and I may be getting it a day early. So just for proof, here's literally my email, my order from Walmart, expected by Wednesday, June 4th. Now, this is an estimate, but it's also an expectation. It may not hold true. I've been checking my email every couple hours just to make sure it's not even getting canceled, because a lot of people have had their pre-orders canceled. There's a big rush going on, and yeah, there's just some crazy things going on here. A lot of disappointment for many people who tried to get their pre-orders last night have then gone to GameStop instead, and that's also been a challenge as well. So my strategy last night with the pre-order situation, I had 3 different monitors up. One for Best Buy, one for Target, one for Walmart, and I also had the Best Buy app again on my phone as well. So I had 4 different ways to pre-order. I had my Ethernet cable plugged in. I made sure no other extra tabs were opened up. I wanted to make sure I had the best possible internet speed, best possible bandwidth, and I was refreshing by pressing Ctrl-R repeatedly. And so when midnight struck, on Best Buy, still said coming soon, nothing changed on the site. On Walmart, it took a little while to refresh. And then on Target, pre-orders were sold out immediately, instantly, all gone. But then all of a sudden I see that my Walmart page opens up and it puts me in a queue. 18 minutes, I gotta wait for 18 minutes. Okay, looks like I got something going on. Now, I didn't initially want to go to Walmart because Walmart, they are shipping the console to you on the day of launch. That's what they are promising. That's what they're guaranteeing, apparently. But I'm always a little uneasy when it comes to shipment orders and me getting my games or consoles day one. I'm sure I will get it, but if I want it immediately, day one, there are always potential delays. And then I saw with Target, I had refreshed it one more time, and pre-orders are back up. So I was like, oh man, I should get this. And so I went in, and I secured the bundle on Target, and I was about to go ahead and spend $530 some when you account for taxes and all, and I pressed purchase multiple times, but I started to get worried because I don't want to spend $530 some several times. That could end up being $1,500, $2,000 if they charge it all at once. So I made sure to check my bank account each time I pressed it, and each time it would fail. But I'm glad it failed repeatedly, because as it turned out, with Target, the initial pre-order sold out instantly, but they do have a second batch, which they're promising to come June 6th through 11th. At which point, I just gave up on that because there's no way I'm waiting even an extra day to get the Switch 2. And then all of a sudden on Best Buy, the coming soon page changes. I can now add to cart, and so I try to add to cart, and it fails repeatedly. By the way, I tried on the app crashed several times. And so eventually I gave up on the app. But I still have this Walmart queue coming up. And eventually, at the 7-minute mark, it jumped to the 1-minute mark, and I was thrown in, and I had less than 10 minutes to purchase my Walmart pre-order for the Nintendo Switch 2 plus Mario Kart World bundle. And that's exactly what I did. I triple-checked the address, I triple-checked the payment information, everything went through totally fine. But then I saw I was finally able to add my Switch 2 Mario Kart bundle to the cart on Best Buy, which I would have preferred because they are doing a midnight release. And so I'm thrown into the queue, and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. Almost an hour goes by, and then I'm thrown out of the queue. Nothing's in my cart. And at that point, I just give up. I already have my Walmart pre-order. I'm just going to accept this. Maybe I'll go to GameStop in the morning to perhaps secure another potential pre-order there in case the Walmart one cancels for whatever reason, because I was hearing that some pre-orders were getting canceled. But last night, before I went to bed, I checked my email and I saw that it said expected by Wednesday, June 4th. And I find this interesting because when I look on the actual Walmart page, it says pre-order arrives by June 5th. So it's not telling me here on the Walmart page that they're expecting it by June 5th. They're saying it will arrive by June 5th. The expectation is June 4th. So with my pre-order still not having been canceled now hours later, and it's seemingly being an expectation for a Wednesday, June 4th arrival, I'm feeling pretty good about this. I'll be excited to play Switch 2 one day early. But the craziness does not stop there. So apparently, a Nintendo Switch 2 was stolen from a factory, and as you can see here, it's a testing version, what you see on screen, but here they're trying to take off the Joy-Con with one finger as they're recording with their phone, presumably. And as they remove it, you can see that's a real Joy-Con, a functional Joy-Con for Switch 2. This looks very real. I don't really have any doubts that this is not real. Actually, there's another person there, so it's interesting that they were letting them struggle. But yeah, it's cool that we can see this, but it's also insane that a Switch 2 was stolen. And I think it just goes to show just how much insanity there is for Switch 2 right now. There's been all these conversations about pricing and all this stuff, but the fact of the matter is it looks like demand is extremely high. Nintendo had to do a little bit of an apology on their own My Nintendo Store page. So here you see update about release day delivery. Thank you to those who have already registered your interest in purchasing from My Nintendo Store. We are thrilled by the enthusiasm for Nintendo Switch 2. Due to the very high demand, we will be working diligently to fulfill orders as product becomes available, but delivery by June 5th is not guaranteed. Your invitation email may arrive after the Switch 2 launch. We'll confirm your shipping date upon purchase. If you wish to increase your opportunity of obtaining a Switch 2 system at launch, please visit our participating retail partners above. Those retail partners are Best Buy, Walmart, Target, GameStop. And so it looks like demand is even higher than Nintendo expected, despite the higher prices. And this reminds me of what we talked about yesterday, how on this official Nintendo page right here from Japan, they had to apologize for the amount of people in Japan for the My Nintendo Store that have signed up for Switch 2. 2.2 million people in Japan alone tried to sign up for the Switch 2 pre-orders on the My Nintendo Store. And this is mind-boggling when you really think about it, because this is just 2.2 million people in Japan, just one market for Nintendo, and it's not across all retailers, but just the My Nintendo Store. So that is a staggering amount of people who want to pre-order Switch 2 when you really think about what that means. And actually, David Gibson said something on this that I found to be quite interesting. So here he says, Japan represents 36.8 million of the 150.9 million Switches shipped, which is 24%. Hence, it's possible the 2.2 million Japan pre-orders is a sign the demand is 9 million plus globally for the launch. And he says plus because, again, that is just for the My Nintendo Store. And also, no analysts are suggesting that the Switch 2 could sell more than 20 million units in its first year, which could be a very real possibility here. Something else pointed out by Stealth from this Bloomberg article here. Analysts expect the Switch 2 to sell between 6 to 8 million units at launch. This would also surpass the launch for the PlayStation 4 and 5, which apparently had a record of 4.5 million. And I remember when PS5 came out, there was a whole bunch of conversations about it being very difficult to secure a PlayStation 5. I didn't pick up mine at launch. I waited like a couple years actually. But if Nintendo does indeed sell 6 to 8 million units immediately, this would be unprecedented, and it would go to show that the Switch 2 is going to be pacing very well to be a very successful console. Will it outsell Switch 1? I'm not sure, because in general sequels don't perform as well as the predecessors. True, there are some exceptions, PlayStation 2 comes to mind. But looking at how sales were for Switch 1 initially. Look here, right? This is quarter 4 ending March 31st, 2017. So this is the hardware sales for those first few weeks the console was out there between March 3rd when it came out and March 31st, the end of Nintendo's fiscal year. And as we can see here, in the Americas, 1.2 million were sold, Japan 0.6, Europe 0.94. For that total month that it was out there, 28 days, 4 weeks, 2.74 million. This was considered a strong launch back then. And now we're talking about the Switch 2 selling 6 to 8 million immediately. And then in that first year, they sold 15 million for a first whole calendar year. If you account for the sales in that first month in the prior fiscal year, 17.79. Analysts think the Switch 2 could maybe hit 20 plus million sold, perhaps even by the end of this year. If that happens, that would be mind-boggling. It would go to show that the Switch 2 is indeed pacing to be a very, very successful console. Do I think sales will likely slow down? The Switch 2 probably won't keep pace with Switch long-term. Probably long-term, after a few years, we'll see that Switch 1 will be a better seller than Switch 2. However, that's not a foregone conclusion. The brand of Nintendo is much stronger today, hence this much stronger initial interest in the console. And perhaps Nintendo may find a way to retain most people who were Switch 1 owners, and they'll all move on to Switch 2, or most of them. They'll bring in some new fans as well because of the whole mouse control setup and increased third-party support. And perhaps there are simply going to be more people out there because guess what? There are more kids now than a few years ago who will also be interested in the console as the years draw on. Something some people may find to be very interesting is we got an announcement for another accessory for the Nintendo Switch 2, and that's this Hori branded Switch 2 camera. So this is one intended for handheld mode. As we've seen from the camera, it's something you plug in with a cord, and well, it's not really for handheld mode. If the camera's positioned on your table or before you while you're in handheld mode, it can work, but if you don't want to do that, if you want it with you while you're playing in handheld mode, maybe walking around or being elsewhere where you don't want something standing, you can buy this. Now, it is only a resolution of 480p at 30 frames per second, but still it's interesting that we're seeing some different accessories for Switch 2 that are doing something slightly differently from what Nintendo themselves have provided. Now, another big talking point that's going around right now is this situation regarding game key cards. As we've discussed in the past, game key cards, the way they work, it's a cartridge in a case you can purchase physically, and when you put it into your console, it will then grant you access to download the whole game, and it only works when the cartridge is in there. It's basically kind of like how discs works for Nintendo's competitors, where you buy a disc, you put it in, you have to install the game before you can actually play it. But once you remove the cartridge, you can no longer play the game on that console. However, if someone else gets that cartridge via trading, borrowing, selling, they can then download the game onto their console and play it. So it has resale value and trade value and all that, but the actual game is not on the cartridge. So if someday, years down the road, servers go down, you will have no way to download this game, or if you don't have internet access, you will not be able to play this game upon initial download. Once it's downloaded on the console, you do not need internet access. But when you first get the game and you plug it in, you are going to have to download it, so you also lack the ability to play it immediately, which is something I really liked about Nintendo Switch, because in comparison to other modern platforms, there's usually not an initial install needed. When you put in the cartridge, you just play it. So game key cards, I would say, are better than just download codes, but also, you know, it's not the same thing as having the full game on the cartridge. And apparently, in Japan, a lot of third-party games, as reported here by Gematsu, are going to be game key cards. Here is the image blown up. All these different games, some pretty big ones like Daemon X Machina, for example, Street Fighter. The actual whole game will not be on the cartridge. Now, part of this is because cartridges are expensive and these games are pretty huge. So if the game already exceeds 64 gigabytes in size, then the games will not be able to fit onto the cartridge because that's the biggest size, and that biggest size is also pretty expensive. So not many people are happy about this. This does seem to be unfortunate. However, not every game is going to be a game key card. Now, something I saw pointed out by this Twitter user here, GK, apparently not every game that's a game key card in Japan, it will be a game key card elsewhere. They're pointing out here how the box art doesn't have the game key card listing. Now some people have countered by saying, well, it could just be a placeholder, it may be wrong, and that may be the case, as GK points out. However, he also points out here that here at Best Buy, Daemon X Machina does not have the game key either, but this other game that's from Marvelous as well does. So they are making the distinction that there are game key cards over here in the West as well. So it may be the case that this is more of a Japan thing. Of course, that's not totally 100% confirmed. Something that is also worth noting, though, is that we are getting Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition physical. It's a 56.8 gigabyte game fitting on the 64 gigabyte cartridge. That's likely expensive, but they are making sure to do it. And might I add that the actual case itself looks really good. Like, the colors for Cyberpunk match up really well to the Switch 2 case, and I really like how it looks. So fingers crossed this game is a good version, because I've actually been waiting to play this game, and on Switch 2 with mouse controls, if the game looks and runs well, I might just pick it up. And I'm sure many would agree that if we are getting games like this, that the developer is making sure it fits onto the case itself, that should be celebrated, that should be rewarded, and it's also a very good game, so as long as it's running well, then it definitely deserves attention. But things have just been so insane regarding Nintendo Switch 2 as of late. These are very exciting, interesting times. Right now, I'm just happy that I have secured my Switch 2 pre-order. Perhaps it's coming a day early, but what about all of you? Were you able to secure your Switch 2 pre-order? Are you excited? Are you still trying to find a way to pick one up day one? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.